Hello, good evening. Welcome to Will's Tarot Path. It is Sunday night. Better late than never. I was hoping to have this video up today, but that didn't happen because I had a very well-deserved, I think, relaxing day. Yesterday was wonderful, but I got up yesterday morning, went to the barber, the whole 9 yards. Then met some friends for it's a little tarot group I have that we meet on Saturdays for a couple of hours. And then when I went over to my aunt and uncle's house to visit with them for a while, and then I got home. So it was in the evening when I got home. So I enjoyed this morning with Hermit's Cave, the look back at I can't remember what the series is called right now, but the review he does of decks that maybe need more recognition. And then Marilyn and Kathy from Nothing So Strange, Marilyn's Tarot taking Nothing So Strange, were live today. And so that was very pleasant. They did a VR they're working on. So if you haven't seen that, check that out. But I am here to continue our discussion on numbers. And we're on the number 2. So let me get to where we were, and I'll do a little bit of review here. So we didn't get far. The last time was just an introduction, and I did go over the monad, and remember that is the one where everything begins. And I did make some notes, so if I refer to those, I will might take a minute, and then I'll edit that out if I need to pause and look up something. But I wanted to go over this just a moment because I realized that the more I thought about this week, the more I wanted to make sure that I had everything discussed. And this is going to be very philosophical, very sort of theoretical, and nothing is written in stone. Remember to always lean into your intuition. Reading the Marseille deck is not like the RWS, where it's more prescriptive. It is really leaning into your intuition. Just as you read with the RWS over time, the cards take on more meaning or different meanings in different situations as you do readings in different people. So that sort of you've noticed that over time, or if you're just beginning, you'll notice that over time that your sort of encyclopedia of card meanings increases over time based on your intuition and the feelings you get from the questions of the querent, so forth and so on. Numbers are no different. But numbers are more so because you have to start leaning into that intuition sooner. But what was before the monad? Well, there was nothing. And as you recall, I said I was going to be basing a lot of what I do on my understanding of Pythagorean numerology. I have read quite a bit. I'll share some of the reading that I've done. Tarot, History, Symbolism, and Divination by Robert M. Place. This is an excellent book. This is a good book to read before you read the next one because it just gives you a taste, precursor. And there might be a little bit of different information in here. But then this is his complete text. That's what I call it. That's not what he calls it. This is the Tarot, Magic, Alchemy, Hermeticism, and Neoplatonism, 3rd edition. And this you can still order from his website. This one, I don't know if you can still get right from his website, but I had no problem getting it. So these two are excellent books. I also have Jodorowsky's book. I don't have that right in front of me, but I do have Yob Ben-Dav's book, The Marseille Tarot Revealed. This is excellent for getting a feel of how to read the Marseille, and he was a student of Jodorowsky. And then I rely on Manly P. Hall a lot. And this is the book he wrote, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And in this book, you'll see I have some tabs here, but he covers everything from, anything that has to do with Egyptian mysticism, Masonic mysticism, numerology, numeration, but it's historical. So he doesn't take a stance in his lectures or his writings. His name is Manly P. Hall. He founded the Philosophical Association in California, or Philosophical Society in California. But wonderful book. There's several different versions of this out. This is the full unabridged text. There is a reader's edition. It's a little bit less or summarized better. This one I love, though, because I love the detail. I love knowing how the sausage is made. But those are some of my reference books. So I've kind of read all that, put it together in what I'll be presenting, as well as the lectures that are still easy to find on YouTube or podcasts. And all you have to do is type in Manly P. Hall lectures, and it is phenomenal the amount of lectures he's recorded over his lifetime before he left us. All right, so before there was nothing, but we can't even conceive nothing, because when we conceive nothing, then that is a thought, that is an idea, that is a word. And the minute we do that, we create something. So look at the monad as being that first impulse of thought, of being. And then once that thought is created, it's something. But it knows it's something because, forgive my primitive art here, I might switch pens because this pen is excellent, but it's not writing on this paper very well. But I have one right here. This is a gel pen. It probably might work better. But when we perceive that something, oh yeah, that's better. When that something recognizes itself, it sees itself. And so we can say this is like the mirror, right? Draw a fancy mirror here for the. So this is the beginning, and then this instance of being, the monad, recognizes itself, and that creates this reflection. So as we go into the twos, one way we can look at it is reflection. Another way you could look at it is the thought, that voice we hear in our brain. We are one. We are one person. We can't see ourselves when we're born. We can't know ourselves when we're born. But how do we know we're there? Well, we see other people that reflect us, but we, within ourselves, have ourself. So have you ever heard that phrase, me, myself, and I? There you go. There's the triad. So there's three. There's me, there's myself, and then there's I. And they're all sort of, you could look at that as different parts of the same person. And once we recognize that, then even though we're embodied in one, we have two, because there's our brain, there's our soul. It goes on from there. So you could just carry that on forever. So it's either a second reflection that exists in our mind, or the one that's a reflection. But then once we recognize that, or it could be like a cell dividing. You have a cell that splits into two. So then we end up with what we always recognize as Venn diagram, the Vesica piscis, which forms the shape of the fish here in the center. But it's coming out of. So this is a very good way to look at it as well. But the two, one can be unity, source, beginning, potential. We call that the monad. Two can be polarity. It can be reflection. It can be opposition. It can be two, like two electrons opposing themselves, keeping each other apart. And this is where I digress, because I can feel this paper, but I'm not actually touching it, because we take the cell in the skin and we break it down to atoms, and we break the atoms down to electrons and neutrons, and the electrons have a force field around them. And the only reason when I touch this book or press down on it, my hand doesn't pass through that book, is because that electrical charge that creates the cells that make my body. Hang on, let me take care of the dog. Dog was attacking cat. Not really, they were playing. But the electrons that form the cells of my body have this force field around it, as well as the book, because it's made of the same stuff, and we oppose each other. So I'm not able to pass through that. So very interesting. So that's the very philosophical part of it. And that's kind of like what I want you to keep in mind, just the broad implication of what that means when we look at the cards, because that will open up a way of looking at numbers, this system, I think, more than just a simple list of 1 is unity, 2 is reflection or polarity. You know, it just you have those words, but now you have a better idea of maybe how to imagine those, implant those in your mind, or feel them somehow. But I just think it is helpful for me anyway. So we have the 2 as a reflection opposition. But what I want to talk about is the 2s, and I have pulled out, let me see if I can get a little bit broader angle on this. I pulled out 3 different decks. There we go, that's much better. And we can see how they relate. This first one is Alejandro Pixie's Marseille Tarot, because I had his other deck out earlier. I want to make sure I didn't say the wrong one. Pixie's Marseille Tarot, CBD Tarot, and Universal. Okay, so here we can see, we'll start with the RWS. And I don't want to single out the RWS because it will get a little, as the numbers increase, but the 2 is an excellent example, especially this 2 of Pentacles, because we see this juggler or entertainer. He's balancing these 2, and they are interconnected, but we don't know at which stance he's standing on one foot, so he might be going back and forth. He might be trying to keep them in balance. We don't know if one weighs more than the other, even though they look the same size. We don't know their densities. We don't know their weights. So he could be barely keeping them in balance, or he could have them perfectly balanced, or somewhere in between. Maybe it shifts as the winds come in from the sea. Maybe that makes it harder to hold. Maybe they're lightweight and they're flat. So when the wind comes in, it's like a frisbee. He's trying to balance it, but it's also getting this force from the wind. We don't know. But all of those things exist within this moment. And that's why I think the 2 of Pentacles, especially in the RWS, is an example of that. And then in the more Marseille tradition, which we see here, and this is the Pixie's Marseille, we see the 2 hands, the one here and the one here, and they're, you know, are they in balance, are they not? And this one. So this one we see the ribbon is not connected. So are these comfortably in place? Are they loose? Is it just trying to connect and can't quite join yet? A lot going on there to think about. So we want to remember that as we go forward. And then, of course, Pentacles is, we think of that as Earth, if you want to put an element to it. Then we have the 2 of Wands. The 2 of Wands. This one, again, is a good example. Like I say, these get more complicated to use the RWS when talking about numerology by itself as the numbers increase, just because the pictures get more specific in what it's trying to convey. But this one, in the RWS system, we normally look at it as he has the whole world in front of him. He feels like he has the world in his hand. And this is his gateway. It's like, it's the active energy that's his portal to the world. I would argue that if we were to look at this more of a numerological sense and put a Marseille twist on it, that it is a balance, because you'll have the crosses. The two are crossed. It is an opening. There's a closure here, but there's two openings either way. And then there's also growth here. So there's growth, and we have blooms now. Whereas on the ace, we just had the baton. So this is the beginning of action. But it could also be what's blocking, what's got this plant constricted, don't know. But then we have this guy here. And as he looks out, we don't know if he's rolled his dice already and he's invested and he's watching his ships go out to sea and he does not know what's going to happen. Or he has the money in the bank and he's looking at his options for investment. We don't know. Now, I know Pentacles is usually with money, but this has to do with structure and ground and earth and fire and activity. So that would be, what are you actively doing with your resources? And then we have the mixture here. So that is the Two of Wands, and I'll go through these briefly. Well, I'll say as much as I can about them, but I'm not going to belabor the point. And then the Twos of Cups. Two of Cups, we say, is water. We think of that as emotion. Same as in the RWS and the Marseille generally share the same elemental structures or feelings as far as the suits go. But now we have the Two of Cups. This one shows more of a partnership. This one shows more of, it could actually be a really going into relationship. And this one, of course, has the astrological implications. Let's not forget the RWS was written by members that were active participants and high ranking in the Golden Dawn. And they layered in their cards, they included Kabbalah, astrology, elementals, correspondences. Everything we hear about that from all these different systems dates back to the Golden Dawn and the RWS. The Marseille didn't start with any of that. That developed over time through many people, through various peoples, but there was not one like, oh, this is the Golden Dawns, or this is this society's tarot deck. This just evolved as and this is not a history, so I'm not going to go into that. But so when we look at the cups as an emotion, this one's still okay to work with because they could be looking at partnering, they could be siblings, they could be romantic. Or if you look strictly at the Marseille, and that's one thing I love about Pixie's Marseille he did, because it has elements of the RWS, but you can look at the predominant artwork of the cups, and if that's what you see as the Marseille interpretation, that's all you have to go with. So when we look at Marseille, we think of feelings and emotions and water and this fluidity. So maybe there is, especially on this Marseille card, and this has that feeling of it, but there's this grounding, like maybe you're very sound in your emotion, you're solid, and then there's this offshoot coming up and it's really blooming out. The dolphins are here, so we see the reference to water. Dolphins usually are, we think of them as swimming and jumping and happy and playing. So this would need to really be read in that viewpoint of what is going on with the querent. What is the question? And Marseille, my understanding is that reading reversed Marseille cards is not a traditional practice. And in fact, if you want to get into people that have read Marseille for a very long time and have learned it from someone who practiced it for a very long time before them, even today, then they think that the major arcana is enough to get a reading with the Marseille. And I didn't find that out until I started reading about these. And that's more from looking at Yoav Ben Dov's book, more of the historical Marseille books. So then we have Two of Swords. which once again, now this is where this leans more into this is a story. Because this is telling us this person has a choice to make. They don't really know which one. They need to weigh their decisions carefully because this is thinking in mind. Moon is mystery, water behind. So this is where we sort of, RWS loses us with the swords. Because what we see here is this opening in the center. So these ideas are prevalent. There's a pathway forward for them. They are able to breathe and grow and show new life. And so if we just look at all these different cards here and we understand, the biggest thing is to understand that each one of the suits has that elemental energy that historically has been there. And with the RWS, you're going to get an intended meaning in the cards. And I probably won't continue with RWS after tonight. But what we do see in the batons, let's see, the swords and the cups. Here we go. Do it this way. There we go. We see there's some universal things we can say about all of them. One is they represent, oh, I didn't want to do that one. I just want to say the Marseille. I forgot what I was doing, excuse me. So I just want to say that we look at these and they all say the same thing. So we start with the element, right? Thoughts, ideas, air, water, emotion, flow, balance, usually some sort of, not earth, but earthly thing, and fire. And we can do balance or contention, reflection. Maybe this is a person who's been really struggling with themselves and now they see a reflection of themselves and they see growth in that area. So when we see these twos, it doesn't always mean two. It could be reflections, but what's a reflection of? What's the question? What's the querent? What is your intuition telling you? I want to make sure. So remember, polarity, reflection, opposition, and relationship. And it can apply to all of these, but how does it apply to the element? And remember, I had notes for a reason. Remember, when we look at these, we're always, that goes back to this could be a reflection of ourselves or something that's going on in our life, as opposed to there being two of something. Manly P. Hall calls it numeration and not, he says there's a difference between numbers and numeration. Numeration is the feeling of number as a symbol, and I discussed that in the last video. Number as a symbol, I think that's important. And when we look back at Pythagoras, which I honestly believe any Western basis in numerology goes back to Pythagoras and has developed from that, come down from that, evolved from that, because as far as I know, that's the earliest reference we have of anything written on numerology. But it was almost this, it was a religious cult, and not a fanatic sense, but more of a monastic sense. So what is the best we can know Pythagoras believed based on the writings of Iamblichus? I'm going to mess that name up. But it was a historian who wrote shortly after his life. Pythagoras didn't look at this as numbers. And when he talked about the monad, he didn't think about one. He just thought about the beginning, the essence, the source, the complete potentiality, what I would refer to as God, what some people refer to as source, what some refer to as spirit. And as I go forward, I thought about this for a while, but if I refer back to that, I'm going to use the term God because that's the term I use. But just know that I understand everybody has their own belief systems and has their own terminology and their own phrasing. And I'm not making any judgments there or trying to lay my beliefs on other people. That's just my practice. And I hope there's enough room out there for us all to have our words that we're more comfortable with. So the monad would be God. If you look at the two, it would be almost this idea of God becoming aware of himself. And then if you look at the three, that would be the first formation of area. So I want to look at this one more time. So if you think about it, if you have, let me see if I can figure out how to do this best. Okay, so object lesson. This is my teacher in me. So here's my headphone. Here's my earpod cord. So let's say this is a point, and this other end is the other point. And between these 2 points, when this other point appears, they exist on this line. They can connect with this line, but all we see is the line. There's no flat surface. And actually, if this were a true line connecting these 2 points in existence, we wouldn't be able to see it probably because it would have no thickness. It would be one-dimensional. And we can draw a one-dimensional object and say it's one-dimensional. But even when I draw, okay, so let's do that. If I draw a point here and a point here and connect it with a line, I can say that's a one-dimensional object, but it's not. It's a three-dimensional representation of a one-dimensional idea. Because now, since I've drawn it on paper, the paper has depth. The paper has thickness. The paper has a flat plane. The ink has depth. You can't see it with my own eyes, but if I were to get a microscope, it would have dimensional depth. There would be some ink higher than others and lower than others. The line would be the same. So even though I can draw this and it can represent a one-dimensional object, or a two-dimensional object, however we do it, it's still going to be just a representation in three-dimensional form. Sorry about that. It makes my head hurt, but it's true. So we have to think about that these are not fully, and Pythagoras would have had no idea, but Pythagoras would have not have put geometrical theory on top of numeration. That would come later with the Neoplatonists. So you have all these bits of information. So when Pythagoras did it, it was more this feeling, this idea, these qualities that they had that represented, in their belief, it was a way to explain how the universe came into existence. Well, if you have a one, you have a monad. Then if that monad has self-realization, it realizes itself, that moves you to two. The three moves you, which we'll get to the next time. Then you'll have the three, which creates a boundary, which creates the first flat plane. So it's very interesting. But he wouldn't have thought of it in the way of planes. He would have thought about like the third observing the other two. So then you have this third one observing the other pairs, and then it just becomes circular after that. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything real quick. So when we're looking at Marseille, we want to remember to look at the number, the suit, the arrangement, the balance, the symmetry, the openness, enclosure, direction, and visual rhythm. And those are just terms. I mean, you get the idea, and I think that's not a list of words you have to remember, but it's just how many different angles we can look at these cards and not have to just say, oh, well, 2 is balance, or 2 is tension. But we have so much more in our brains that we can utilize to feel with this. And that's what it is. It's how do I feel with these cards? And how do I connect that feeling and my intuition? Will my intuition and my feeling be at opposites, or will I be able to bring them into balance? And if I can bring them into balance, then man, it's going to open up. These will all be windows to many paths in just the twos. And I am not going to belabor the point. I just want to make real quick that I haven't missed anything, and I'll look through again once I'm done with the video. And if I've forgotten something I wanted to mention, then I will mention it in the next video. But so what I've decided to do is this will be the video for the 2. And then I'll do a video for the 3. And since these are not going to be, well, this is 20 minutes. I didn't think it'd be that long. But these aren't terribly long. But what I'll do is I'll post these as individual videos. And then when I get through all 10 of them, I'll still leave them individual. But then I'll go back and I'll create one long one that has the whole thing in it. So if you ever want to go back and watch just the whole, I don't know, it'll be over an hour. But if you want to go back and watch the whole thing at one time, you could. But then the individual ones will still be there as well. So that's my plan. So if you want to wait till the 3 comes out and then watch 2 or 3 together or whatever, that's fine. But do this. If you have questions, you can message me in the comments here. I'll check the comments for questions. Or I'll put it on the screen right here. Will's Tarot Path at gmail.com. Will's Tarot Path at gmail.com. If you have questions. And I can answer either one of those or both of them. And I will answer as clearly. And if I don't know the answer, then I will delve into my library, because that literally what I showed you tonight was only half of it for numbers. I had a stack the other day by my chair of like 10 or 12 books going through everything. Because remember, this is not learning rote memorization. It's not learning solid meanings. And what I have done through reading and studying is developed a feeling for how to read these cards. So nothing I say is law, because it's my feeling of how these elements and numbers connected to my intuition. So I'm excited to find out if this helps you connect your feelings of these numbers to your intuition. So with that being said, I hope you have a great night. I really hope this was helpful. If there's anything you don't understand, please ask me. I love this conversation. This is where I nerd out. And I could have said a lot more, but I think I got technical enough in some points. So I just find it fascinating. I hope you do too. Anyway, have a good night. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at number 3.